Today, we are yet again back with another arc, and this one is even crazier than the last one. But let me catch you up to speed on what happened in the previous episode. So we saw Will basically saving the entire city of Regarden as he unlocked his Wheeze ability and took down the Vander. But even then, when he got to the tower, he was denied to join any of the factions, leaving him crushed and colorless. We see Elfie throwing a pillow right at Sarissa, as she calls her a liar. We then see Elfie cutely starting to crash out in her head, as she says that Sarissa told her that she could scout Will if he made it to the tower. Sarissa, while having more pillows thrown at her, tells her to please control herself, telling Elfie that she isn't a child anymore. Elfie doesn't let up at all, as she gets closer up to Sarissa and tells her that the only reason she waited this long was because Sarissa said that she couldn't scout him while he was still in school. She thought that Sarissa and the whole faction said it would be okay if he proved he was qualified. We then see Elfie pointing to the right, where it's a bunch of letters stacked on each other. Elfie tells Sarissa that it's her fault that none of her love, or rather scouting letters, ever made it to him. Sarissa just asks Elfie how many she actually wrote. She then continues, as she tells Elfie that it wasn't her decision, but that it was the Upper Institute. We then see Elfie looking super cute as she is sulking, and asks if by that she means Croitz. Sarissa tells her that she is spot on, saying that Croitz said that if it came to it, he wouldn't contest the Academy's decision, but he had his doubts about letting a lowly sword into a faction, and that he wouldn't approve any attempts to scout him. Elfie then starts to look mad, as she asks Sarissa if she can pop over to the Upper Institute, and that she is going to freeze the place solid, but Sarissa in an instant tells her no. Sarissa then sighs as she asks Elfie to please calm down, telling her that if Will can demonstrate his competence and abilities during the bloom, she have Croitz's word that she can scout him, continuing as she says that the tower is nothing if not meritocratic. If you play favorites, it won't endear Will to anyone, explaining that he is an outlier, and as such, he needs to convince the whole tower to acknowledge him. Sarissa looks right at Elfie, as she tells her that she will pull some strings with Claire and the other factions, or she asks Elfie if she is afraid that he won't be able to prove himself. Elfie tells her, of course not, saying that if she knows Will, then he will definitely make it through this, and after that, we see her in her bed hugging a ton of Will plushies, and this series really can't help but get any cuter. Anyway, we then cut back to the ceremony, and Claire tells them that they have been granted the blessing of color. We also get to see the Dark Fraction, who are cool, but something I'm not sure if we have seen before. Sion explains that his Gloria turned red. Colette says that hers turned brown, and that her brooch has the Earth Faction emblem. Claire then speaks up again as she says that the colors they have been blessed with mark them as distinguished mages, telling them to now go and that their factions await, continuing by saying that she prays that each and every one of them may reach the tower's distant heights. With that, we see everyone who got their factions go to them, and also Sion has a stare down with Keredwin for some reason. After that, however, we head to the mages that didn't get a color, and they look to be in total despair as they are just standing there while everyone else leaves. We then head back to Claire, who tells them that those of you who have advanced to the tower but have still not been blessed are now colorless, or in other words, they are now worthless, explaining that only mages who belong to a faction may continue their ascent. No others may proceed beyond this point. Lihana thinks that all the nobles' whispers were true after all. Sion adds on that if you can't join a faction, you are stuck on the first floor forever. You're just there to keep the higher mages going, like a cog in a machine. We then head to Julius, who looks crushed and says that everyone talks about the glory of the tower, but now he sees where it got its nickname, the graveyard, and as Will hears that, he also gets super shocked. Anyway, Claire isn't done. As she says, seeing that they have made it to the tower, they offer them another chance, telling them to show their skills here, and perhaps a faction will take them in, which brings them to the main event of this ceremony. Claire tells them that if they couldn't prove that they were qualified before, then now's their time to shine and make their flowers bloom. We then see some sort of insane stone monster coming out of a portal-looking thing, and Will asks if they are kidding, and wonders if these are even monsters. Claire explains that there's only one rule in the tower, and that's to prove your worth. With that, she tells them that the first bloom starts now, and we then see Julius right away, who looks to be more ready than ever as he screams out. Claire then tells all of them that their task is very simple: defeat the monsters in any way they like. Fight with finesse, or hit them with a flurry of slashy spells. Show the factions what they can do, but as she says that, we see the monsters throwing their own attack, and one of the mages gets sent back. He looks nervous as he wonders how you can even beat them. After that, we see a girl this time, and she looks fired up. She gets out some magic circles and attacks the monsters with fire. However, as the fire hits the monster, we can see that it just gets absorbed. It then gets dark around her as she realizes that magic doesn't work on them. After that, we head to Croitz, who explains that they are called Zoctonia, monsters produced by the tower to act as guardians of the first floor. Judging purely from the strength of a single specimen, it would be worth 30 credits, equivalent to the monsters on the lower to middle floors of the dungeon. We then see the mage getting sent back once again as she says that she can't beat them, thinking that she made it all the way to the tower, but that she still isn't able to. After that, we see Croitz putting up his glasses like an anime villain, as he explains that recent graduates really don't stand a chance. The Zoctonia's twin shields deflect any perfunctory attempts at spell work, but just then, we head right over to Julius, who we can actually see managing to kill one of them by getting out a pillar of ice and stabbing it. However, he does look pretty exhausted from the looks of it. Just then, one of the Zoctonia appears right behind him, and they then go to attack him, but luckily, it was only one of his Ars Weiss clones that he got. After that, we see that it wasn't just one clone that Julius had, but that he instead had multiple standing all around the field. After that, Julius gets in the finishing strike on one more as he uses Glace Etier on one of them. We then see Sarissa, who tells Elfie that he killed 2 Zoctonia just like that, saying that his skill with that spell has improved significantly since the Grand Mage Festival, explaining that she didn't think anyone could master her clone spell to that level. However, her words don't matter as we just see Elfie slumping in her throne. After that, we head to the Wind faction, who also admit that Julius sure is in a different class, saying that they should recruit him and that they could put him right to work. We also see the Dark faction, who ask why he hasn't been scouted yet, saying that Julius is clearly an exceptional mage. Julius seems to be able to hear this as he gets excited, thinking that he really is a genius, thinking that he can use clone magic. He is good-looking and high-born. They would have to be crazy to even consider comparing him to that riffraff, and he himself deserves to be scouted. He has a huge smile as he thinks that he is radiant and a prodigy, asking Elfie to please just look at him, but as he looks right at Elfie, we can see her looking away in an instant, and that seems to really shock Julius a lot. He then wonders about just why in his head, wondering if it was the Grand Magic Festival, wondering if it is because he insulted that no talent, and that she is mad that he bullied him, which to be honest is a valid reason if that's the case. We then see some other mages explaining that it's a pity, and that if only he weren't an ice user, then they would have scouted him. This makes Julius scream out internally. We then get to Sarissa once again, who explains that none of the other mages have shown any promise, but she then tells her to wait, as she thinks that, for better or worse, there is one who seems to be attracting attention. That one is Will, as he is just on the ground looking for the moment. Julius asks him what he is doing, asking if he is going to keep running away. But we then see Lihanna explaining that he isn't running away, but that he is instead watching. We then get to Will, who tells Kiki not to help him, and she just meows at him. We then see Will taking out his goggles, as he thinks that he now knows why Elfie had such a sad look on her face. She was telling him, "Sorry that I couldn't scout you." We then see a panel of Elfie looking at him intensely, before Will gets up and swings his sword around. He puts on his goggles as he, in his head, tells Elfie that it's okay, telling her that he will make it to her on his own 2 feet. And with that, we see him dashing right ahead. He goes to one of the Zoctonia, who tries to attack Will, but Will dodges it easily. With that, Will goes behind him and swings his sword back. He then lets out the most insane warrior scream I have ever heard before he completely cuts through the Zoctonia. Sarissa is amazed as she says that he is fast, but we then see Filvis as well as Lefia explaining that it isn't speed, but it's rather his weight. Logwell joins in it as he says that he jumped over Zoctonia's shield and cut the monster in 2. Guilford tells them that he's already learned enough about them to predict their behavior in so little time, but we know that it's just what the goat Will does. We then see another Zoctonia trying to attack Will, but he obviously dodges as he thinks that he has seen that move and that they tried it before. After that, he runs behind it as he thinks that he can read his enemy's movements better than ever. The Gloria is lightweight and perfectly flexible. It's so easy to move around in it. And on top of that, Mr. Donnan's sword cuts like a dream. He looks super cool as he explains that just now, he feels like he can do anything. We then see Julius looking shocked as we can see that even more Zoctonia starts to appear. He himself uses his Glace Eater and he shoots a ton of ice spears right at them. However, we see that one of his ice spears seems to go astray. He looks worried as he sees where it's going. But Will just smiles as he asks Julius if he can borrow that. We then cut to Will, who goes right to Elfie's platform since the ice spear is heading there, and we get a super small panel of Elfie's eyes as she just looks at Will. Anyway, we then see Julius's ice spear making a big explosion there. It creates a ton of smoke, but Elfie seems to be completely unscratched because when the smoke clears, we see Will, who looks more intense than ever before, as he says that it's now fully charged and that it's his Glaus Wes. We then see that he absorbed the ice into his sword. We then see Elfie, who quietly says his name before Will quickly jumps back down to the battlefield. He says, "Load burst Glaus Mill," as he then goes completely ballistic at the Zoctonia and seems to be eliminating all of them. Everyone in the crowd just questions what happened, saying that it was a blizzard and a sword strike magic, but question if it truly was magic. We then see the smoke clearing once again, and there Will is standing, and the crowd starts to wonder if it is the Whist that saved the day at the Terminalia. We see Claire freaking out a bit as she wonders what they should do now, as he took out all of the Zoctonia. However, we don't need to wait to see what happens for long, as we then see a magic circle appearing right around Will, and we then see both Elfie and Will looking at each other with a bright smile. Elfie is then the first to speak up as she takes her wand and announces that it's a blessing from Albus Vina. She chooses him for the Ice faction, but it's not just her either, as we also see Keredwin, who explains that he also chooses him for the Fire faction. They are then followed by the Earth, Wind, and Dark factions as well, and I'm so interested in the Dark factions, like, I just can't help it, as they look so dope. We then see someone saying that he just got blessed by 5 factions, and that he's not even a Multos. But we then see Croitz just looking at this while being silent. After that, we see a strange aura appearing around Will, as they say that it's unbelievable and that it must be the first time in history. Claire then speaks up and tells him that he has been blessed by multiple factions. As such, he may choose, asking him which faction he would like to join. Will just looks super shocked, while Elfie smiles at him with a huge smile. Will's eyes then light up as he is about to answer, but just then, we hear someone screaming at them to wait. It's of course the one whom no one likes. As we see Croitz explaining that this spell of his is not fit to be called magic. He explains that, in light of his feats during the Terminalia incident, they granted him honorary admittance into the tower. He is willing to allow that. However, he must question whether he is qualified to join one of their illustrious factions. But just as he sees that, we see Elfie getting up from her chair. Elfie has a serious and angry look on her face as she asks Croitz if he wasn't watching just now, saying that Will cast a spell. Croitz tells her that of course he has, but what he was casting was merely an appropriation of another's spell. Croitz screams out that he isn't a mage. When all's said and done, he's nothing but a boorish, unrefined warrior. Continuing, as he explains that he is no better than a dwarf, he shudders to think what scorn they would incur if they were to allow Will to ascend the tower. We then see Eleanor, who tells him that it's enough with his babbling and tells him to get to the point already. Croitz tells her that it's quite simple, explaining that if he has even an ounce of what it takes to be a wand, then let him prove it. With that, we can see the entire area starting to get filled with a bunch of bright light, before in the next panel, we see some sort of dragon worm-looking creatures appearing right around Will. Croitz explains that these are magical creatures known as Wurs Ooze. They were recently developed to keep the dwarves in check, telling them to now watch as Croitz himself uses a spell called Christo Wreath, which pierces right through the Wurs Ooze. Croitz tells them all that, as they can see, they disintegrate when stuck with even the lowest level spell. On the other hand, their gelatinous exterior is susceptible to only magic. After that, we see one of them appearing right behind Will. Will manages to dodge it easily as he then goes to strike it. Will does manage to cut it in half, however, it doesn't take long before the parts grow back together. Will then looks shocked as he explains that his sword can't hurt it. Just like with the Balkar, it's completely impervious to physical attacks. We see Elfie getting super nervous, while Clary wonders what he is going to do now. We then head to Keredwin, who says that Croitz makes a fair point, explaining that it can't hurt to see him fight in battle. Moreover, as a Magia Vander, he must agree. The tower is the peak of the magical world. It makes little sense for a sword that cannot conjure its own magic to rise so high. We then head back to Will, who sees the Wurs Ooze coming back at him. He thinks that slashing at it won't get him anywhere, but still, artificially created things like these always have a core, thinking that he just needs to find it and crush it. However, we then see a panel of Croitz asking him if he's that naive. Anyway, with that, back to Will, who we can see putting his sword right into one of the Wurs Ooze. While he does that though, Croitz continues as he tells him that they gave it a gelatinous body. What makes him think that they couldn't give it a gelatinous core as well? Telling him not to underestimate the tower and that they are the pinnacle of all magic. We then see on the side that it looks like Will is really struggling. But as he has his sword in its body, he can see electricity coming out. Because of that, Will gets back and gets some space as he has now realized that the Wurs Ooze has the power to shoot out electricity. We then see Claire up in the sky, who explains that a stun attack is for suppressing dwarves, saying that his creations are as nasty and vicious as ever, as she calls out to Croitz. We then head back to Will, who we can see is exhausted, but it's not just him. Some of the no-name mages also see this and think that it's bad, and that he will lose at this rate. We also see someone who I think is called Emma, but she says that they are high mages now as well. With that, all three of them scream out that they can help, and that if Will can use their magic, then he can take it down. But just as they were heading to Will to help him, suddenly, a huge explosion happens right by them. We then see that it's Croitz, who looks mad as he tells them to stay out of this. He explains that their audition has already ended, and that this is a trial to judge the heretic. We then head to the spectators area, where we see Sion walking forward. He goes to the edge before slamming his hands down with all that he can. He then looks super mad, as he thinks that it's not a trial at all. We then go back to Will, and we can see that the Wur's ooze is going for him. Will manages to go away from it, and after that, he tries to go on the offensive as he goes to it and cuts it multiple times, but even then, it just starts to regenerate. After that, a big explosion happens, and we can see Will flying out and hitting his head right next to a stone pillar, which must have hurt. Will looks super hurt, but even then, he tells himself not yet, and that there's no way that he would give up. But just as he has gotten back up on his feet, Croitz suddenly snaps his fingers. This makes it so that the Wur's ooze starts to wither away. He tells Will that it would be pointless to continue, saying that, as expected, he is not qualified to join a faction, and we can see Will looks completely crushed by that. Still, Croitz continues with his speech, as he says that he proposes that he remain colorless, and that his name be added to the lowest tier of the upper institute. His wisdom defeated the Vander. It is no exaggeration to call it extraordinary. He then gets a smug look as he says that he assures him that they will unravel the mystery of this unknown power and then share it with the magical world. We then go to Keredwin, who asks Croitz if he intends to make him a guinea pig, saying that if he can unlock the mystery of the fifth element and put it to use, then he doesn't care who takes him. We then cut to Elfie, who has started to emanate a ton of ice around her, and she looks at Keredwin with an intense glare. Keredwin tells her that he won't have her sulking like a petulant child, but still, Elfie doesn't care as she screams out. She tells Croitz that this isn't what they agreed on, telling Croitz that she has had enough of this. Will then looks hopefully with big eyes right at Elfie, which is cute. Anyway, we then cut to Zio, who tells them that all this arguing is getting on his nerves and calls them losers. Zio then explains that they will be having another bloom soon anyway, telling them to save their wrangling until then. Will looks super lost as he hears that, but we then cut to Claire, who explains that in a normal year, the next bloom would be in about 6 months, but every faction has urgent vacancies to fill, what with all the losses they suffered at the Terminalia. Because of that, this year they are making an exception by having the second bloom in 1 week. Claire continues as she tells them that as survivors of that tragedy, they, the so-called Grim Generation, have more potential than anyone in the magical world. The Tower, no, scratch that, even the world has high hopes for them. Or to put it in another way, they intend to make them suffer on their behalf, so she hopes that all of them who failed to be blessed today will give it their all at the next bloom. She then tells Will that it also includes him, and he still looks pretty lost, but with this, he still looks a bit hopeful. Claire then speaks to the Upper Institute and Magia Vander, asking if she can assume that they can all agree on this. After all, the Tower only has one rule, which is to prove their worth. We see Croitz being a bit annoyed by this. Meanwhile, Keredwin says that it's fine with him. All of them, including Magia Vander, made it here by doing just that time and time again. Claire then smiles at Sarissa, and Sarissa thanks her so much. We then cut to Eleanor, who asks if this farce is over. We then see both Filvis and Lefia using their powers and close the thing that they were standing on as they then move up. We then see Lahana, Sion, Colette and Wignall being pretty down because of this, but the one who looks most crushed is Elfie, who just says Will's name before she goes up. We then also see Croitz again, who calls it a waste of time and says that it's not even worth sighing about as he then walks away. We then see the mages that were left. Julius says that they are having another test like this in just 1 week, but suddenly he hears someone falling and calls out to them. We can see that it's Will who is now lying down on the floor. Julius is silent as he sees this, but he suddenly hears some weird sounds coming from Will. So he asks Will if he is crying, but he tells Julius that he isn't, but that it's just too funny. Julius can't believe it, but Will continues as he says that it's always the same. After all the obstacles, all the times he thinks it's over for him, just when he thinks he has almost made it, he gets shoved right back down again. We then see Will clenching his fist. He thinks about all of the times that he has been done over and treated unfairly, but after that, he thinks about what Finn told him. With that in mind, he screams out and puts his fist up towards the sky. He then looks super determined as he screams out that he will make it to the top, no matter how many times he gets pushed down, and this is why Will is the literal GOAT. After that, however, we cut to Zio and Guilford walking. As they are walking, Guilford tells Zio that it was unexpected. Zio asks him what he is talking about. Guilford explains that Zio didn't give Will his blessing, saying that he thought that he favored his type. Zio then just turns around and puts his hand on Guilford's head as he calls him an idiot, telling him that he still hasn't figured him out yet. He then lets go of Guilford, and we can see that he didn't like getting held, but Zio then looks pretty cool as he tells Guilford that when a guy has to claw his way up from rock bottom, that makes him way more interesting and way tougher, which goes without saying. With that, we head to the temporary quarters, tower facility, first floor. We then see Will studying. From the looks of it, I thought about explaining what Will is saying here, but it's just a bunch of nonsense to be honest. Anyway, we see the other mages watching him. After a while, they approach him and tell Will that they would like for him to come with them to train in the dungeon. Asking if he is interested, then they would be happy to have him in their party. Will can't believe it as he is super shocked, but just then we see the door slamming open with huge power. It's none other than Julius, who goes right to Will and tells the other mages that he is training with him. Will looks super confused and asks him what he is talking about. Julius looks annoyed as he tells Will that what he needs right now isn't a bunch of little pretend friends. He then puts his hand onto the table as he tells Will that what he needs now is to control that whiz ability or whatever he calls it. Will seems to be super confused by this, but Julius once again slams his hands down on the table as he tells Will that he is going to help. Will tells him that he could use the help, but he asks Julius about why he would do that. Julius is silent for a bit before he tells Will that he and Julius have had their ups and downs, but he agrees with Wignall and the others, telling Will that he thinks of him as one in his party. With that sweet talk, we see Will getting super happy and excited. Will has the biggest smile ever as he thanks Julius, thanks him for the offer, and tells him that he gladly accepts it. We then see Julius getting a creepy smile as he calls it excellent, while Will can be seen in the background still looking super happy. We then get into Julius's brain once more as he thinks that as if anyone in their right mind would help someone like Will, saying that this is purely for his own future. He thinks that he will help Will and earn brownie points with his alleged childhood friend Elfie, then his honor will be sure to be restored. He starts to look even creepier as he thinks that he will milk this wannabe dwarf for everything he's worth, and then he will be scouted into the ice faction. After that, he calls out to Will and points his finger right at him, telling him to not just sit here and that they are starting his training right now. Will just gets a super happy feeling as he then jumps right up as he screams out. Meanwhile, it looks like Kiki can see through Julius pretty easily. After that, we head to the Fields of Solitude, first floor facility East End. We then see them on some sort of grass field. Will has his Glaucus fully charged now, and he looks super cool, but he then calls out to Julius and tells him that he charged it up like he told him, but he asks Julius just what he is supposed to do now. Julius looks right at him and tells him that he will need to keep the spell charged. With that said, we see Julius doing an incantation as he says, freeze, whisper, quell, and dance. Thy name is Guardian, their name is Icebird. After that, we can see that he has managed to summon some Fride Gardinas, which are flying right at Will. As they are approaching Will, Julius tells him that they are low-level guardians, but that he put a fair amount of magical energy into them. They'll survive a hit or two of weak magic if it's their same element. He continues as he tells Will that what he is going to do is fight with the guardians while keeping his output low enough that he doesn't destroy them. Will looks to be super shocked as he even starts to sweat and asks what Julius means. Julius then looks right at him as he tells Will that he is going to learn to activate that whisk thing all by himself. Julius goes even further as he says that in 6 years at the academy, Will has never managed to cast even the most elementary of basic spells. At this point, instead of trying to learn a pre-existing spell, it's going to be much more constructive to figure out how to use the freaky new power that he has got. Will tells him that it may be true, but he asks how he can possibly do that. Will goes into his own head as he thinks that he can't use his own magic. That's why he has to charge his sword with other people's spells. He is dependent on outside magic. The idea of generating his own magic to activate Wiz kind of goes against the entire concept. What they are trying to do is to produce one from zero. It's the equivalent of creating a new spell. Julius seems like he has had enough as he screams at Will to be silent and that he doesn't need to hear his theories. Julius continues as he tells Will that there's no need to set their course for a port that they don't know they can reach. What they are going to do is extremely simple. He is going to anchor the magic. Now, this we can see is leaving Will is super confused, but Julius screams right at him as he says that it doesn't matter if he borrowed the magic from him. If he can anchor that energy inside of him for life, then it will be his magic. Now, I don't want to credit Julius too much, but this is really clever. We then learn that if his current output is 100%, then they want him to reduce that to 1 or even a fraction of 1%, saying that the most important thing is to limit that output so that he can keep the magical energy. Julius isn't done, as he says that Will is going to hold on to that energy as he goes about his day, even when he is sleeping. Ideally, he will learn to control it so that he only increases the output when he is in battle. If he can manage to do that, then he will be using his own magic, and that is honestly pretty insane, as we even see. Will starts to get amazed as he hears that. His eyes even start to light up a ton and start to sparkle. Julius tells him that at the next bloom, he can get that he is fighting those oozes again. They very kindly fall apart. When you hit with a minimal amount of magical energy, if all he has to do is beat them, then it shouldn't matter how puny his magical power is. Julius then starts to scream as he tells Will that there's only so much that they can do in less than a week. First they need a goal, then they work out the steps. None of that cramming stuff he likes doing. We head into Will's head as he thinks that Julius wants him to anchor the magical energy and keep it inside him, using so little of it that he doesn't destroy the Guardians, thinking that this is basically magic control training, using Guardians as restraints. Will then looks closely at Julius and thinks that it makes perfect sense and that he really earned his spot in the school's top 3. Will then gets another huge smile as he thanks Julius, saying that he really means it. He tells Julius that he is amazing and that he doesn't know why he didn't get into a faction. While that was supposed to be a compliment, it felt a bit backhanded by Julius, who tells Will that it was his fault and starts to scream. With that, we cut scenes, and we see Iris asking Elfie why she didn't give her blessing to Julius. Iris says that even as a silent watcher, she is struggling to stand by while his talent goes to waste. Elfie looks to be sulking still, but she then explains that it's because he said pervy things about stripping her bare. He never stopped picking on Will, and on top of that, he revealed her dark past to the entire school, and now, if I'm honest, then those are completely fair reasons. Iris then says that this is completely personal then. Elfie then tries to change the topic, as she asks Iris what Aaron thinks about Will. Iris just tells her that he says, "What will be, which only makes me so much more confused. Anyway, she then continues as she tells them that it's what he thinks. It seems that unlike the headmistress Calden, Aaron isn't necessarily going to welcome a sword into the wandfold with open arms. However, if Will can forge his own path, then Aaron may still acknowledge his willpower and strength. We then see Sarissa on the side who thinks that Will, the appearance of Wiss, has divided opinions in the tower. Personally, she hasn't managed to wrap her head around what Wiss even is. She looked it up in every book she could find, but there wasn't much information. After that, we see Iris once again speaking up as she says that the power to turn the world on its head is calling it a true anomaly. We then once again cut to Sarissa, who thinks that she'd hate to say this to Elfie, but she isn't so sure how best to deal with him either. After that, we once again cut back to Iris, and this was very like back and forth. Anyhow, she has a smile on her face as she says that, of course, if treatment of her dear schoolmate Will starts to take a sour turn, she will use her watcher position to take him into protective custody, telling Elfie that she has nothing to worry about. Elfie then just gives her a face and smiles back as she tells Iris that she really should save those fantasies for her dreams, calling her a little thief. And with that, we see both of them looking pretty angrily at each other, and Sarissa just thinks that Will might actually start a civil war in the tower. With that, however, we cut back to Julius and Will. Julius sends a ton more guardians at Will, but he then asks Will how many times they have to start over. Will is caught off guard, but Julius looks exhausted as he tells Will that he destroyed another guardian. He isn't showing any progress at all, asking how much of Julius's magical energy he is planning to waste. We then, however, head into Will's, as he thinks that as hard as he tries, he can't hold out past 50 minutes any longer and the energy dissipates. Not to mention that as soon as Wiss is undone, it saps all of his physical strength as well, calling it a pretty intense weakness and saying that if this keeps up, then he will have used up all this time for nothing. After that, Will calls out to Julius. He tells him that he really thinks that they should try to find out more about Wiss before they do anything else, even if he isn't quite sure what this power is, continuing as he says that he searched almost the entire school library, but nothing really mentioned it. Werkner seemed to know something, but apparently not much about how it works. He explains that it will take more time, but that he thinks that they should ask the High Mages if they can check the tower's archives or find someone who knows something, but before Will can even finish his sentence. Julius tells him that he's already working on that. He explains that he sent one of his clones to the Upper Institute library, and he has another one looking for someone from the Finn tribe to see if they know anything. Will is super shocked as he says that he is using remote-controlled Weiss. Will then says that he can cast the spell without help now, but he then scratches that as he once again asks Julius why he would do that, saying that it's way too much. Julius then screams right at him and tells him that it's because they have no time. They have to train and collect information all at once. They have no other option. It then gets dark around him as he holds onto his head. He thinks that looking at 3 scenes simultaneously is making everything a jumble, saying that this is why he hates multitasking. Will still doesn't seem to understand any of it, as he once again asks him why he would do this all for him. This makes Julius crack as he tells Will that it's because he has ulterior motives, obviously, telling Will that he should have figured it out already. He continues as he screams out that as a mage of the House of Rheinberg, it is his duty to climb to the top. He is only using Will to get there. Besides, a nobleman never breaks a promise after all, as Will hears that and thinks that it's true. Thinking that even after the Grand Magic Festival, Julius kept his promise to Donnan and the dwarves. After that, we can see Will with a smile on himself, as he then scratches his nose before telling Julius that he really is kind. Julius is completely mind-blown by that, but Will tells him that he thinks that everyone shows kindness in different ways. For Colette, it's helping him. For Werkner, it's scolding him. Even Sion has his own brand of kindness. Will then looks so wholesome and so cute as he tells Julius that he is saying that he is only doing it out of a sense of duty, but he is still a good person, a really kind one. This seems to trigger something in Julius's brain as he seems to remember something. He then starts to walk away as he asks Will where this is all coming from, asking him if he has to make everything weird. He then ends it by telling Will that he is taking a break. Will tells him that it's fine and that he is going to keep trying a little longer and then thanks him again. We then see Julius walking away before getting a close-up shot at his face, as he in his head asks Will, how dare he call him kind, thinking that he couldn't care less about kindness. After that, we see a really young Julius. We see a maid called Anna telling him that he is so kind. Julius tells her that of course he is, explaining that it's a noble's job to help the weak. Anna just smiles at him before patting him on his head. Julius then asks Anna if she likes him when he is kind. Anna takes off some sort of necklace as she tells him that everyone does, telling him that they all adore their kind-hearted young master Julius. But Julius then thinks that it was all a lie. He explains that it didn't matter how kind he was. Anna went off to belong to someone else, and then he didn't need to be kind. It's smarter to be selfish. Flaunt his talent, use others to his advantage, ridicule the weak, and gloat about his superiority. We then head back to real time, where he looks mad, saying out loud not to look at him the way Anna did, and talking about kindness. After that, we see the necklace he got from Anna in his hand, as he says that he doesn't need kindness, thinking that there was a Julius who was kind, but that he killed him. However, as he is walking, we can see that it's something following him. With that, we head into Croitz's laboratory and the tower facility's first floor. Here we see Croitz calling it a pointless struggle. He then calls to someone called Charles to speak to his colorless comrades, and Charles tells him that he will. With that, we once again head back to Julius, who has gone somewhere else now. He says that this is what he gets for not paying attention, explaining that he is now lost. But suddenly he starts to wonder if this is a dungeon. Now, why does he think that? Well, because he can hear some attacks closing in on him. Luckily, he is fast enough to react and manages to create a shield out of ice. Julius then looks ahead and sees some mages, explaining that they are Upper Institute mages. The mages tell Julius that these are orders from the top. They are to find the reprobates running around their garden like they own the place and teach them a lesson. Explaining that their unsightly training ends once and for all, Julius can't believe this, as he says that they are trying to stop them. They want to take away the minuscule chance that they have of passing the next bloom. But asking if they aren't tower mages as well. However, his talk doesn't seem to help that much right now, as all of them start to send magic spells right at him. The first one tells Julius that he couldn't possibly understand. He doesn't know the humiliation of making it to the tower, only to be stuck here. Mocked as a colorless nobody, the other one says that he refuses to spend his whole life as a cog in the tower machine. And then lastly, we see the third one explaining that they are shorthanded after the Terminalia. This is their chance. Croitz promised to send letters of recommendation to the factions if they crush him. We then see Julius as he thinks that this is the result of the cutthroat competition inside the tower. These sad wands have given up their dignity in their desperation to crawl out of their graves, but rotten as they are still high mages. And with that, we see Julius being sent back into a wall. We then get a close-up of his face, and he looks pretty damaged. Julius thinks that he is all but spent after summoning so many guardians and overusing Ars Weiss, and they have him outnumbered too. With that in mind, we see Julius getting a smile as he calls out to them. He calls someone Tony and says that he is his 1-year senior. Next up is the arrogant and self-important Mary, and lastly, Oren, his brazen little underclassman. Julius starts to get up as he tells them that they advanced to the tower so quickly with the new spells they invented, but how the mighty have fallen. He starts to look insane as he calls them a sorry sight, saying that the Upper Institute really squeezed the last drop of worth out of them, telling them that he would rather die before ending up a used-up rag as they have been. We then get to Tony, who tells him that he didn't get scouted either, and that he is just as colorless as they are. Julius just starts to laugh as he asks if his eyes are just for show. Telling them that he is Julius Reinberg with an intense tone, he continues as he tells them that he will use that no-talent Will and anyone else in his path soar to the top of the tower and become Elfie's successor. He then quickly thinks about Anna before saying that after that, he will look down on every single person who abandoned him, telling them that he doesn't care if he has to use the Magia Vander to do it. As for the 3 of them, they are no good to him now. This only made them a lot angrier as they scream his name and explain that even at the academy, they never liked him. After that, all of them sent more magic spells right at Julius. As they are going right at him, he thinks that, exactly, there's nothing kind about him. The people standing in front of him who hate his guts are proof of that. He asks Anna if she sees, thinking that he has changed and that he isn't the same kid anymore. But before he could finish that thought, we see that the magic attacks suddenly go astray. After that, we see Will in front of him as he asks Julius if he is okay. Will explains that some high mages attacked him out of nowhere. He thought that they might go after him too, so Kiki and he came looking. Julius just looks at Will with an angry stare as he asks him why he would help him. Will, the sweet boy that he is just shocked as he says that they helped each other all the time in the dungeon, and he is going out of his way to train him. But before he can finish speaking, Julius screams at him, asking Will if he realizes how much he belittled him during the Grand Magic Festival, and asking if he is okay in the head. Will still just give a smile as he tells him that he knows, thinking that he is an idiot, who instantly likes someone as soon as they are kind to him. Julius then thinks about Anna and how she told him that they all adored him. After that, he looks at Will and sees once again that they have the same smile. This makes him super mad as he straight up goes to punch Will, but it ends up being himself who gets the most hurt. Will, on the other hand, just asks him why he hit him. Julius then looks him dead in his eyes as he tells Will that he hates him. He continues as he screams that he hates Will and his stupid face, which is really mean, but I think that Will doesn't take this too much to heart. We then see the other loser mages, who wonder what's up with them, but Tony screams that it doesn't matter and that they can crush them right now. Just then, Will gets right into action as he tells Julius to stand back. Julius just tells him that he doesn't get to order him around, but just then, something strange happens as out of nowhere, a ton of fire starts to fill up the entire place where the mages are standing. Someone asks them if the academy didn't teach them not to use magic for things like this. Will then looks up and asks who someone is, and we then see someone, a super cool looking mage, who introduces herself as Keredwin. She tells them that they have shown her such a wonderful display of adolescence, asking them if they won't let her thank them with some tutoring. And we can see Will, who looks excited, while Julius just looks mad in the background. Anyway, after that, Julius locks in as he says that he recognizes that name. He explains that she is one of the 7 mysteries of the academy, right up there with the Watchers and the Witch of the Hammer. She kidnaps students night after night to use them for her magical experiments. We then get a close-up of Keredwin as she assures them that she doesn't do anything that scary, explaining that she simply finds interesting students and gives them training and guidance, just like what she is offering to the 2 of them now. Will looks amazed if she is truly offering training and guidance for both of them. Keredwin tells him that it's right, saying that he probably doesn't know this, but she has had her eye on him for quite some time now. We then head to Julius, who rightfully gets suspicious by that, thinking that she is a witch that he has never seen in his life before after all. But then, funnily enough, we see her kidnapping both Julius and Will, as she tells them that they can talk details later. First, they should relocate, as after all, if they stay here, then the Upper Institute goons will find them. We then see them flying around in the sky, and Keredwin says, "You can tell yourself it was a trap, and just fall for it with a music note by it." After that, we can see her tapping somewhere before, out of nowhere, a door seems to appear, and she tells them that they have arrived. We then learn that this is the secret base for single witches. She tells them to sit anywhere they like. With that said, she then uses her magic to get out a ton of food for them, and I mean a ton, as it's everywhere, and it looks fantastic. Keredwin tells them that it's a little late for them to have dinner. Saying that she made it herself, Julius just looks at her with an annoyed facial expression as he asks her if she really expected them to eat food made by some shady witch. But just then, he hears Will on his right start to dig in, which makes Julius a tiny bit furious. Will just tells Julius that Kiki says that it's fine. After that, Julius changes topics as he explains that what he would like to know is where in the world they are. Keredwin tells them that this is the hideout that Claire secretly built in the first floor facility, saying that she asked Claire if they could use it, as after all, Claire is her apprentice. Will is super shocked by that, but says that, then again, it explains a lot. Julius adds on that she got that devil attitude from Keredwin then. Anyway, Julius then goes right into it, as he asks Keredwin what she is plotting that she needs Will for. Will then looks at him and tells him that this woman helped them, and on top of that, she is Clary's teacher. Julius just then gets furious as he tells Will that he needs to learn not to be so trusting, explaining to him that she could be one of the Upper Institute's assassins too, and that all of this could just be an act, screaming right at Will's face that even if it's not, there is no possible way that a mage who has mastered sorcery would help them for nothing. She could be scheming to use them for her experiments, just like the school legend claims. Keredwin just laughs lightly as she hears that. She then says that they do say caution can be a sign of a good mage, but with that in mind, she decides to get out a ton of magic circles right around them. Both Will and Julius get super shocked. Will thinks that it's a supermassive magic barrage, so many spells just like that with no incantation, wondering when she summoned them. Julius, on the other hand, thinks that it's 6 different elements, all of them but light, wondering if she is a Multos. Then it looks like Keredwin is standing on business, as she tells them that at their current level, if she truly wanted to, she could crush them both in 2 seconds flat, saying that this doesn't prove anything, but does it at least convince them? She then starts to just casually laugh as she tells them that if she meant them any harm, this big bad witch would have eaten them up ages ago. Julius, right after that, as he is still annoyed, tells her to first confess what exactly she is plotting, telling her that if she can't tell him, he refuses to let her teach Will. Will just says his name, but Julius then gets right up in his face as he tells him not to get him wrong, explaining that he is the one who gets to take advantage of him. He doesn't want her stealing him from under him, so if Will thinks that he is being nice here, then he better think again. While he is going off, we can see Will just holding his hands in front of his ears. Anyway, with that, we cut back to Keredwin, who is laughing. She tells them that it's alright, and that she will tell them. She starts it off with a bang, as she explains that she knows a little something about Wiss, and this makes both Will and Julius light up in an instant. Keredwin then continues saying that one of the reasons she came to them was to offer her assistance. As for the second reason, there are stirrings in the Upper Institute, and it's starting to head in an unpleasant direction, telling Will that there are forces that are trying to ensnare him. Will looks determined as he asks her if she is talking about Croitz. With that, we, funnily enough, head right to him as he asks if Will has disappeared. We then see Charles, who is his assistant. He explains that Will, along with Julius, according to the report, was someone intervened. Croitz screams at Charles to search every nook and cranny. The tower hasn't logged any magical signature, indicating that he left the first floor, telling Charles that he must be hiding somewhere. Charles then looks nervous as he asks if he can ask something. He asks Croitz why he is so intent on destroying Will that he is willing to risk the wrath of Elfie. Croitz asks Charles if he thinks that he can let such valuable material fall into the hands of those war-obsessed factions. Wiss needs to be put to good use efficiently and to the fullest, like this mage slayer. He explains that he doesn't know what organization created it, but it had magnificent potency, mass-produced power that can be wielded even by low-level monsters, armaments that can turn even untalented mages into something useful. This is exactly what they of the magical world should strive for, he continues, as he says that the real power is in numbers, even in efficiency. Numbers matter. The presence of a mere 5 unstoppable wands won't help them fight off the celestial host. What they ought to seek is not a supreme one, but a standardized ultimacy. For every mage to be able to wield the power of Wiss, that is no doubt their true prime. And to that end, he desperately needs Will's body, so that he then can cut it open, and he looks manic as he says that. We then move back to Charles, who explains that not even the Magia Vander, let alone any of the factions, has seen this hidden side of Croitz, calling him the Mad Dissector. He then takes out the heart of the Mage Slayer, and then, in the next panel, it goes dark. As we then see him completely crushing it, Croitz then calls out to Charles, telling him to inform the factions that he will have a strategy for countering the mage slayers shortly. He has nearly grasped the concept. Charles, who is now on the floor with shock, thinks that if Elfie knew about this, it would be the end of the Upper Institute. We then once again cut to Croitz, who looks scary while saying that the next puzzle he will solve is Wiss. With that, we then move back to Keredwin, who says that if she had her way, she would have preferred to watch over Will as he climbed to new heights all on his own, but the situation no longer allows for that. Keredwin admits that she does want to transform him, but not into a guinea pig. That's why she decided to intervene when she did. Plus, sweet little Elfie personally asked her for help. Will looks happy right away as he hears Elfie's name back to Keredwin, who says that it's all about her, telling them that how they interpret it is up to them. With that, we see both of them being silent. Will then speaks up and calls out to Julius. He tells him that he wants to trust her. Will, in his head, thinks that he doesn't think that she is lying. He gets this strange feeling like he has known her for a very long time. Julius just looks at him before telling him to have it his way, saying, "What do you care if he goes over to whoever's going to make it worth your while?" That's the only reason that he helped Will to begin with, and this is so funny. Anyway, Will tells him that he didn't mean it like that, and we then see Keredwin just laughing as she sees this. Then, in her head, she thinks that they are such good friends now, explaining that they would make a good party. After that, she gets up, and in the next panel, she appears right in between them as she tells both of them that it's settled for them. It's now time for their power-up training, saying that Keredwin will show them the way. Will just tells her, "Alright." However, in the next panel, Keredwin tells Will that now she knows that they just met. However, she will need Will to take his clothes off, and Will looks super scared. In the next panel, we see Will without his shirt as he asks why he has to be naked. Julius says that he knew it, and that Keredwin is some kind of freaky fetishist. Keredwin is embarrassed as she tells them that it's not like that at all, explaining that this is a necessary evil and telling Will to put his hands down. Julius, however, doesn't budge as he tells her that it's exactly what they think it is, telling her that she is 100% an authentic pervert of a witch. But he suddenly gets silent as he sees all of the scars on Will's body. Julius thinks that he has heard rumors, but wonders just how much he tortured himself to get to the tower. Anyway, we then head to Keredwin, who tells them, "Let's see." She touches Will's back and asks him when and how he got this scar on his back. Will tells her that it was probably when he was little and shielded Elfie. Keredwin then looks smug as she says that she sees and then slaps his back, which makes Will embarrassed or something in that direction. Will then asks her what she is doing now, but she tells him that she is making sure she knows where to find the key to the next door, explaining that the truth is that she has been watching their training in secret. She tells them that it was a very good job coming up with the idea to anchor the magic. If Will can just control the anchored magic, then he will have mastered Wiss. That concept is correct indeed. Then the next panel is kind of strange as Keredwin seems to be using Will's head as a table for, let's say, something rather large. She then winks right at Julius as she tells him that he could stand to be a little more true to himself, but that he really is an excellent mage. Julius, however, is just silent. He then tells her to spare him her obvious flattery, asking if he was wrong or not. Keredwin, however, tells him that he wasn't wrong, as far as anchoring the magic or saving it up inside himself. Will has already achieved that. After all, the blood of a mage of a wand flows in Will's veins, explaining that it's just that his body is a little unique. Instead of directing the magical energy outside, it greedily hoards it inside. Though his flesh may scream if he takes in a hit of external magic, his body will store it. Will is obviously super confused, but Keredwin tells him that his assignment now is to figure out how to access the magic that he has stored inside, telling him that, in other words, he will learn how to charge the spell without help. That is the next stage for him to attain. However, Will then tells her to wait up. He says that he thought that charging Wiss was dependent on other people's spells, on external power. Keredwin tells him that, sure, it's true, but that it's not the only way, telling him that if he needs proof, then he should remember that he activated abilities other than the spells he has charged. After that, Keredwin starts to create a circle around him and tells him that he is now going to learn how to do it on command, telling him that the story of his magic is tied to his blood and his memories. By retracing that path, he will gain the ability to produce a new charge, one that doesn't depend on the magic of others, a charge of feelings. After that, Keredwin goes behind Will and pushes him forward as she tells him that he will use the power of his thoughts and emotions. We then see some sort of fire starting to appear right around him. Keredwin tells him that now she will pour her magical energy into the key and guide him to a certain place. When he is there, he needs to remember his origins and carve into himself the method of reviving those thoughts. After that, she starts to activate her wand and put something on Will's back. She then says, "Here the oath binds, true name of sword concealed, the uncharted bloodline traced. Here's the keyhole find, the good name of Witchborough, now to unfold the tale." She then smiles at Will and tells him to have a good time. After that, she puts the key in and tells it to unlock, calling it Dwarf Historia. It then looks like Will's soul almost goes out of his body, and we then see it going through all of his memories and just looking at them. After falling for a while, he suddenly wakes up, but is a lot younger. He looks around and wonders where he even is, but just then, he hears a familiar voice coming running at him. It's of course Elfie, who asks Will if he is okay. Elfie tells him to come on, and that the woods can be dangerous, so they should hold hands, and I can't. This is so wholesome. Will is just a bit surprised to see her. However, Elfie tells him that she will keep him safe, and she has a huge smile on her face. Anyway, we then cut to Julius, who comes into a room and asks Keredwin what is going on, telling her that he has been unconscious for 4 days with no sign of waking up. Keredwin looks back at Julius as she tells him that he's diving into his dreams. She explains that she used her magic to give him a catalyst, and now he's working on reviving his past. Julius is super confused as he asks her what all of that is supposed to help him get this new power. Keredwin then takes her tongue around her lips as she says that she isn't quite sure it will work, as, after all, the sword is under Finn's jurisdiction. Julius just looks at her and asks her if she is serious. She then puts her hand on Will as she explains that she has no intention of criticizing Finn's method. However, she does think that if they are going to stand against the heavens, they will need a different approach. Julius asks her what she is talking about, but Keredwin continues and says that history is buried within your body. The tracks made by wand and sword constantly intersecting trace them all the way back to his origins, and then, if possible, she hopes that someday he may reach the source of it all. And this is super interesting, but it just gives me so many more questions. For example, why does she have a picture of Will and Elfie in her home? However, we seem to leave that for now as we see Will, who thinks that his hands and feet are smaller, and not to mention Elfie's a little too. It's like he has gone back to the old days. Elfie then has a huge smile as she asks Will what's wrong. Will, however, just looks around as he wonders if this is really his past, wondering if Keredwin used her magic to send him back in time. No, scratch that, as magic is even powerful enough to turn back time. That would mean that this is a memory. However, he questions whether he is dreaming about something that happened in the past. While he is in his head, however, we do see Elfie yelling towards him a ton, but since he still isn't answering, we can see that Elfie is getting pretty mad as she looks at Will, super annoyed. After that, Elfie throws herself right at Will and screams at him to look at her. Will is super confused, but he then looks at Elfie, who is close to crying. Elfie asks him if he was thinking about another girl just now. Will, however, tells her that he wasn't. Elfie, however, continues as she tells Will that he is always spoiling Claire and the other girls at the orphanage. Will tells Elfie that he's just trying to help Father, who is the director of the orphanage. Elfie then gets even madder as she tells Will not to do that, telling him that he isn't allowed to cheat on her. Now this is actually super wholesome, but I just want to remind you guys, this is the same person who is currently one of the strongest mages ever. Anyway, we then get into Will's brain as he thinks that he came to think of it. He guesses that Elfie was even more selfish back then. Will then speaks up and asks her how he can get her to forgive him. Elfie looks right at Will as she tells him that he can do it by giving her a hug. Their eyes then meet, and both of them start to blush. After that, Will hugs Elfie tightly, and that makes her blush even more. She then tells him to pat her on the head as well, and Will then just does that. And we then see Elfie just laughing and having the biggest smile ever in the world. We then head into Will's head as he explains that it's all so familiar. He remembers he used to do this to get her out of her bad moods. Elfie then takes Will in her hand and starts to walk away. She tells him that now that she is full of willpower, it's time to go and slay the beast. Will looks really concerned as he asks her if she just said beast. Elfie looks back at him and explains that there's supposed to be a weird beast in the forest, saying that Father doesn't like it being here, so they are going to get rid of it for him. Will continues to look worried as he tells Elfie that it isn't safe. He tells her that she can do amazing things, but that he can't even use magic. But just as he says that, he thinks that he didn't mean to say that, thinking that this is the past. So is he repeating exactly what he said back then? Elfie then tells him that it's okay, and that she brought their favorite book after all. She explains that this will give them all the courage that they need. She looks right at Will and tells him that everything's going to be fine, as Elfie will be here to protect him. Will looks at her as he thinks that it's right. The old him was a coward who was afraid of everything. Elfie was always protecting him. This made Will wonder when it was that Elfie started depending on him. Will then takes her hand, and the two of them start to run through the woods. However, we then see this insane beast-looking creature spotting them. We then head back to the two of them, and Elfie says that there's a war in a place called Regarden, and some scary people and monsters escaped and came here. Will asks her if that's true, and Elfie tells him that it is, telling him that the beast in the forest came from Regarden too, and now it's making trouble. Will then thinks that it's all coming back to him. 10 years ago, he and Elfie went into the forest behind the orphanage. Will then speaks up and asks Elfie if she can handle it. She just has a huge smile as she tells Will that she, of course, can. Will knows that he for sure remembers this conversation, but everything after that is a blur, so he wonders what exactly happened. Just then, as they are happily walking and holding hands, we see the creature coming from behind them. He attacks them with no hesitation and makes both of them fly away. They both hit the ground pretty heavily, but as they get back up, they look at it and think that it's a crystal monster. However, Will, on the other hand, thinks that it's not a monster, but that he has seen enough now to know it's a creature, a magical weapon made by mages. It's already been damaged, so it really did escape the war. The monsters then start to roar right at them. Will gets scared. Meanwhile, Elfie tells him to stay right here, and she walks towards it. Will is just still on the ground and calls out her name. Elfie then looks super determined as she tells him that she is going to take it down, explaining that she will do it with the awesome spell that she thought of. With that, she uses Ars Weiss, and we then see the first showcase of her ice clones. Elfie then gets a smug look on herself as she says that she and a bunch of other hers are going to beat it black and blue. Will on the ground can't believe it as she says that she's multicasting to Ars Weiss. Her magic control was so advanced even at this age. He always knew that Elfie was amazing after all, but even then, he wonders why he has such a bad feeling about this. We then see Elfie saying that here she goes, and she then uses Terrace Nono, which sends a ton of ice crystals right at the monster. But just as they are getting closer, we cut to Will, who screams at her to run, because after that, we see that the ice crystals that were going to the monster are now out of nowhere heading right back at Elfie. We see her ice clones getting destroyed. Before we see Will, who looks over at Elfie, just then, he gets one of the ice crystals directed right at him. We then see both him and Elfie being sent back. Will tries to get up, as he says that it's a magic's reflection, and that it was what this creature was built for. Will then spots Elfie on the ground and screams at her to run. Elfie, however, tells Will that she isn't hurt, and that she isn't even scared. She continues as she says that she is going to take the monster down, and then protect Will herself, and as Will hears that, we can see him looking super destroyed. We then get into his head, as he explains that he can't move. But Elfie is about to get hurt, and it's all his fault. He tells himself to get a grip, and to move, and to run to her. After that, we see Will start to grip the grass as he thinks that he thought that the person he hated most in the world was the version of him that needed her to protect him all the time. With that, he tells himself a final time to go and do it, and after that, we can see him up on his feet as he starts to rush forward. We then cut to Elfie, who is using another of her spells right at the monster, but of course the monster just sends them right back at her. Luckily, however, we can see that before any of the attacks managed to hit Elfie, we see that Will came and blocked them all as he got on top of her. Elfie's eyes go blank as she calls out to Will before she starts to scream out of pure agony. Will then falls right on top of her, and Elfie screams at him multiple times to just wake up. However, instead, we get into Will's head as he thinks that he remembers now that he shielded Elfie and passed out, but he wonders what happened next and who it was that saved Elfie. We see that Will's eyes are starting to go blank, and it then goes blank for him. But then, in the next panel, we see some strange witch telling Will to awake. This makes Will's eyes get back in an instant, and after that, we can even see that it's some weird thing coming out of Will's body. Will himself explains that he feels so hot, he feels as if his flesh is on fire, and that his whole body is about to explode, thinking that his body is the vessel, and that it's becoming a sword. After that, we see Elfie putting her hand through Will's hair as she calls his name. However, Will is just in his brain, as he thinks that there was more to this adventure. After that, we can see that he is getting on his feet. He starts to walk away from Elfie and towards the monster. We then get a close-up of his hand as he thinks that this is the origin of the sword and the beginning of Wiss, saying that he is now fully charged, and with that, we get an ice spear right in his hand. However, we then see the monster starting to roar right at Will, but still Will looks locked in as he says, "Tirus Wiss," and seems to shoot the ice spear at the monster, and we can even see how much it shocks Elfie. But Will then thinks that it all makes sense now. He now sees why he knew back then that nothing could stop this power. He recognized it, as Elfie's magic had created it before, explaining that this is the mage blade, and with that, we see Will going to slash the monster. However, as he hits him, we can see that both of them manage to collide with each other. Will looks a bit worried, but just at that moment, we see Elfie, who screams out to him. After that, we can see her right by Will's side, as the two of them then look right at each other. The two of them then shake their heads at each other as they hold the weapon together, and they then, with all of their power, go to try and pierce the monster. And we then actually magically manage to see the monster being frozen solid. However, after that, both Will and Elfie fall backwards due to the force, but they manage to fall next to each other, and they hold on to one another. Elfie tells Will that he has magic, and that right now, this is his own magic. Will, however, doesn't answer, as we can see that he is beginning to once again lose consciousness. He thinks that this is his origin story, the beginning of the Mage Blade, a precious feeling that he won't forget again. He will never forget this bond that he shares with Elfie. We then see his eyes closing even more while Elfie is just smiling at him. But then, just when they are about to close fully, Elfie thanks Will, and this is so wholesome, I can't even lie. After that, we see Julius and Kiki being right on him. However, Julius screams and asks if he is finally awake. Will is super confused, but Julius then tells himself to hurry up, explaining that he has been asleep for 6 days and that the second bloom is about to start. Will just looks down at his hand. Meanwhile, Julius asks him if he is even listening. We then see Keredwin on the side, and she asks Will if he managed to access the source of the magical energy anchored inside of him. Will closes his eyes as he says that he did. Keredwin continues as she tells him that he retraced his life's path, asking if he can now revive it. Will tells her that he sure can anytime, and Keredwin just laughs at that. But she then tells him to go out there and write the new tale of the Mage Blade, and Will tells her that he sure will, and we then see him walking out with determined steps. We then cut to the ceremony, where we see Claire saying that Emma has been granted the blessing of wind, and Lyril and Gordon get to join the fire faction. We then cut to Croitz, putting up his glasses as he thinks that they may be desperate to fill their ranks, but the elemental faction's standards are far too low, explaining that these mages are children who only just got out of school, but it seems like no one cares what he thinks right now, as we then move on to Claire, who tells them that there they have it. She congratulates them and tells them that they can head to their factions. After that, she tells them that the second bloom is just about over, but before she can finish her sentence, we see Lihanna saying that Will and Julius aren't here yet. Wignall adds that they will be disqualified if the bloom ends now. But we then move towards Croitz, of course, as he says that waiting any longer would be a waste of time. He suspects that they failed to come up with an effective strategy and fled the challenge in despair. We then see Claire, who is super angry and thinks in her head that it's what the guy who deliberately tried to stop them says. Croitz then starts to look menacing as he says that those who run from the purgatory in depth of research have no right to climb the tower. Explaining that the Upper Institute will see to it that they are looked after, he then calls out to Elfie and says that he trusts that she has no objections, and we then just see a silent Elfie who is praying for them. And just then, Croitz starts to look weird, and we then quickly see why as we see both Julius and Will sprinting into the room as they apologize for being late. We then see a super annoyed Croitz. Meanwhile, both of them announce that they are here for the bloom. We see Colette's eyes light up as she sees Will, and Wignall then calls out to Julius. Meanwhile, Croitz just puts up his glasses as he calls them lowly guinea pigs, saying that giving them more trouble than they are worth. After that, we see more of those war's oozes starting to appear, and Croitz tells everyone that just like last time, they will evaluate their qualifications as a wand by means of a suitable challenge. Croitz goes further as he asks if they agree to the terms and asks Will and the Magia Vander. From the Magia Vander, we see that it's only Keredwin who says that they have no arguments here, but that all of them agree, of course. We also have Will, who tells him that he's on board. However, after that, we get into Julius's thoughts as he wonders if he is really going to be okay. He thinks that they have absolutely no idea if he actually managed to control Wiz or not. He then takes out his wand as he thinks that he will just discreetly cast a spell for him, but before he can even do that, we see a magic circle appearing under him, which leaves him stunned, but we then see that it's Elfie who did it. She looks at Julius as she tells him that she has granted him her blessing, telling him to please come this way and not to do anything else. Julius tries to argue, but Elfie just has a super huge smile as she thanks him for helping Will, but tells him that she now wants him to believe in Will. Julius is just silent as he thinks about it in his head. He goes back and forth, but he suddenly speaks up and tells Will that if he wastes all of his hard work, then he will make Will pay. Will just thanks him as he then starts to look ready. After that, he puts on his goggles and in his head tells Elfie to just wait. With that, we see the Wurzus staring him down before Claire announces that they can begin. But before we see any action, we spot Keredwin in the seating area. She explains that through her magic, the spiral path of the sword has already been opened. Will should know the steps by now, so he should show her, and also show her the new world of the sword. After that, we head towards Will, who tells himself to picture it. He thinks about the book. Then, in the next panel, we can see him holding the book together with the younger version of Elfie. Will continues to think as he tells himself to turn the page. Remember those feelings. Place the bookmark and find his spot. Read it through and carve it into your soul. Retrace that path that he walked, the story that he has lived. Revive the magic that he needs. And then, I can almost not even say it, but we then see Will being able to do it as he uses his feelings charged Terrace Wis reloaded. And this is honestly mind-blowing, like Will really managed to do it. We can see from Croitz's look how mad he is about it. Meanwhile, Colette explains that it's a blade of light, or not even that, as she calls it, a sword made of ice magic. We once again then see Croitz, who is just even angrier now as he calls it impossible, and says that he managed to produce Wis all on his own. But after that, we see Will getting into it as he drags his sword back before easily swinging it right at the Wurzus with no problem at all, and just that little attack makes the monster die. Sarissa explains that it is so strong. Guilford adds on that, though it may not be as strong as an externally charged Wis. Last, we have Keredwin, who says that even so, its destructive force is at least as great, if not greater than a mid-level spell, explaining that it sure is a surprise. Anyway, Will isn't done, and far from it. It seems like he tells himself to put his feelings into the blade, and to use them to power the sword, and with that, we see him killing yet another one of those monsters. We then see Elfie, who gets big eyes as she watches this and says his name, not to mention that we have Zio, who slams his hand down and explains that this is what he is talking about. We obviously can't forget about Keredwin, who tells Will that he gets full marks and not only that, but also a gold star. Just then, someone comes walking behind her. The mysterious person tells her that they choose not to intervene out of respect for her willingness to advance him to the tower, saying that it looks like it worked out. We then see that it's the goat Finn, but that's not even the craziest part, as he then asks if he should call her Mistress Cauldron. Keredwin looks back at Finn and asks him to please stick to her real name when she is in this form. It's exhausting having to cast aging magic on herself after all, and on top of that, she believes that the tower is off limits to non-mages. Finn just starts to laugh as he tells her that it's a little late for that. Keredwin then looks at Finn and tells him that anyway, it's not like he was pulling the strings by himself, explaining that he was the one who gave the dwarves that rare Wist gem. Finn just explains that he is a new wielder of the fifth element. Surely she can look the other way over such a minuscule gift. Finn then has a bright smile as he explains that he's still growing as a vessel. His magic amplification abilities aren't developed enough for him to reload on his own, but with help from that Wist set silver, he can handle it just fine. Finn doesn't just stop there, however, as he says that his hair is going white, losing his memories. Will was too immature before the cost of using Wiz was significant. Now that he's grown from his 6 years at the academy, Finn can finally teach him some things. With that, we see Will cutting down the last of the monsters, and Finn, in his head, wonders if Will can be the one to show them the unknown that Keredwin wants to find. Anyway, after that, we go back to Croitz, who screams out that it's impossible, and he looks absolutely furious. Meanwhile, we can then see Charles behind him, who is just a bit confused and concerned for him. We then see the Earth faction saying that the creatures are gone. The Dark faction also joins in and says that the output, if he were that much like a dwarf, then he could never generate that much power. However, just after that, we see legit Elfie and Colette, as well as Lihanna, all looking at Will with big eyes, as they can't seem to believe it, and all of them start to blush. We then head back to Will, who looks at his sword and explains that it has now gone back to normal. He thinks that when he charges it himself, the magic gets used up that much faster, saying that he will have to use it sparingly. But of course, it couldn't be over here as Croitz screams out, telling them not yet. He says that he can't accept this, his ilk can't use magic, and that he refuses to believe it. We then see Claire, who just tells him to come on and that he really is just nitpicking now. Croitz, however, explains that he isn't. He says that if he cannot explain the mystery behind his powers, how can he call himself a mage? And how do they know that his sword isn't actually a magic item? The use of equipment other than one's blade in the bloom is strict. They must investigate Will to ensure that he is in full compliance with the rules. We then see that some of the factions seem to actually agree with this. After that, we see Julius, who says that after all this, they are still arguing. Sarissa just explains that it only shows how much of an outline Will is. Not even the faction leaders can make up their minds on how to deal with him. But we then see Elfie, who looks extremely pissed off and ready to burst at any moment. We then head into Sarissa's head, as she thinks that the only ones who can settle this matter are the Magia Vander, the tower's top of the top. But it can't be Elfie. Will is practically family to her. Everyone is sure to assume that she is playing favorites. However, Sarissa does admit that Elfie is almost at her breaking point, wondering if there is not some way to get another Magia Vander on their side. Just then, however, we see Zio, who steps out of his chair and calls this stupid. He explains that if they want to see what this kid can do, there's one simple way to do it. He calls out to Will and tells him one hit. Will is super confused as to what he means by that, but Zio tells him that he needs to show them that he can survive one hit. Do that, and he will gladly give him his seal of approval. We then see that Zio has created a whole lightning bolt ability right at his hands. Will looks at this and thinks that it's an extra short incantation, thinking that it's a low-level spell. However, Elfie tells Will to run, because right after that, we see Zio sending it away, and it's far from a low-level spell, as it's a crazy spell that goes right at Will. Will looks super shocked. He knows that defense is impossible and evasion is also impossible, which means that he is pretty much doomed. But he does have a slight chance as to surviving a fatal blow, and then he knows what he has to do. However, before he can finish his sentence, we see a huge explosion happening right by Will, as the attack has already reached him. We see Elfie, who screams his name with all that she possibly can. We also see his friends, and all of them look super shocked and confused. But don't you worry, as when the smoke clears, we can see within it. We then see Zio smiling. While Elfie obviously looks really worried, but when the smoke is fully gone, we see Will explaining that he is fully charged and he has Zio's Zalja attack totally absorbed, and this is just pure cinema. We see some other mages asking what is going on and just what it was that Will did, but we then have Finn, who just laughs as he says that he ate the magic. Saying that he charged the thunderbolt as soon as it hit and halved the power, Keredwin says that of course, Will couldn't absorb the entire spell, so he did get burned by Zio's humongous lightning attack. But he still survived what was a fatal blow that he couldn't fend off or evade. Anyway, we then head to Zio, who can't seem to help himself but just hysterically laughs. He looks right at Will and tells him that he did it, saying that he survived an attack from Zio himself. Zio asks them if they all didn't see this. Will took an attack from a Magia Vander, and he's still standing, asking them what more proof they need. He tells Will he sees that he has his approval and that he doesn't belong on the bottom. He has the biggest smile ever as he tells Will to come up to the top. But just then, we get to Croitz once again, who screams and tells Zio no. He tells Zio that the Bloom ceremony is a solemn tradition to determine who deserves to join a faction. This is not the way to proceed. However, before he has finished speaking, we see Zio right by him as he uses his lightning to basically teleport to him. Zio then looks at him and tells him, "Alright," telling Croitz then that that means that he can also survive his attack. Telling him that there's no way that Will can do something that Croitz himself can't. Zio tells him that if he screws this up, then he will end up a certified nobody, asking if he has got that. This scares Croitz to death as he says that he acknowledges Will's right to ascend the tower. After that, we see all of his friends smiling and finally breathing out, as we now can comfortably say that Will can now join a faction. We then see Elfie running with all that she can. Sarissa calls out to her, but it doesn't help, as Elfie wastes not a second at all as she jumps right into Will's arms. Will himself is pretty surprised by that, as he just says her name. We then see Elfie crying uncontrollably as she thanks God that Will managed to do it. We then see Claire and Sarissa both looking at this. Meanwhile, Colette looks a tiny bit jealous. Anyway, back to the main pair, as Elfie apologizes for not being able to do anything to help. Will just tells her not to be sorry, but instead, be happy. Elfie is confused, but Will tells her that she has waited here for so long, and now he has finally made it, and he has a bright smile on his face. We then get to Claire, who says that she is almost sure that she doesn't have to ask, but she still asks Will about which faction he will be joining. Will is about to say that he is going to join Elfie's faction. However, not long before, someone grabs him. We see that it's Zio, who straight up tells him that he is wrong, and that he is coming with him, and we can then see that Elfie is about to snap. She starts to emanate some insane power as she asks Zio to just read the room, asking if he is a pea-brained, witless, man-stealing thief, telling him that she is going to freeze him to death. Will then screams at Elfie to calm down. After that, he asks Zio to please let him go, explaining that he appreciates the sentiment, but that he is planning on going with Elfie, However, he actually gets cut off in his sentence as we see Zio, who just uses his lightning to completely fry him, and he screams out. In the next panel, we see him completely out of it as Elfie screams out his name. Zio then holds him in his head and asks him what he said, asking if Will said that he wanted to join the Thunder Fraction and that it's settled then. However, obviously, that isn't going to work as Elfie goes to him and tells him that she has had enough of his antics, screaming at Zio to give him back. We then cut to Colette, who asks what is going on down there. Rose scratches her face and tells her that it looks like Will's being headhunted. But with that, Colette then lights up as she says that if that's the case, then maybe the Earth Fraction should get in on it too, telling Rose that she saw how powerful Will is, explaining that having him would be good for the Fraction. Saying that she promises that it's not because she wants to be closer to him in the tower, Rose just tells her to calm down, but still, it's cute. We then get back, and Elfie asks Zio why he is doing this, asking him if he really wanted to. Then he should have scouted him at the beginning. Zio, while still holding onto Will's head, tells Elfie that he didn't want him then, but now he does, telling her that it's as simple as that. But we can see Elfie getting more frustrated. Zio then continues as he tells her not to put chains on desire. Just one of the little maxims he lives by. Riches, drink, woman, man, whatever he wants, he takes it, and that's what he does. We then see almost everyone collectively calling him a savage, but we then see the Thunder Faction adjutant, Guilford, who just says that he is a paragon of logic and reason, calls him a great mage. We then see Elfie, who apologizes to the great mage of logic, but tells him that she doesn't intend to let anyone take Will away from her. She then gets to him and screams at Zio that she will annihilate anyone who tries. Zio just looks at her with a smug expression and starts to laugh before telling her that she talks a tough game, and that she should come on, she and he, looking right at her as he says that the winner gets Will and asks if that sounds good. Elfie, in an instant, tells him that it sounds perfect. But just then, Claire interrupts as she says that she isn't letting two Magia Vander duke it out over a boy, telling them to knock it off. However, we then see Keredwin, who asks her why even try to stop these hotheads. Any intervention on their part would only drag out this already protracted charade, and Eleanor adds on by telling Claire to let the sloth and the savage kill each other. Their absence would only do them good, and we just see Claire asking them to come on now. After that, we see that Elfie has Will in her arms and gives him to Sarissa while telling her to take care of him, and Sarissa is just super lost and silent. After that, she jumps back down and stands against Zio. Someone asks if they are being serious, and someone else says that the two top mages in their world are really going to fight over a boy. We then see Finn, who just loves it, asking what they can do, and that the Magia Vander are free to act however they want. Elfie then genuinely looks super ready as she asks what the signal to start is, but Zio tells her that they don't need one and that they have already begun. After that, we then see Julius by Will as he screams at him to wake up and open his eyes. But suddenly Julius's eyes start to go blank as he can feel an insane amount of attack power behind him. After that, we see that it's Elfie who is starting it off. She says El Glace Froce, El 7 Flores El Caldena, and this spell is honestly insane. Man, this is why I love this manga so much, because the art is like nothing I have ever seen before. Anyway, Colette says that here they go, and Wignall explains that Elfie is casting the big spells right out the gate. But just then, Zio appears right behind Elfie as he tells her that he missed her. Elfie tries to look behind her and tries to get a defense ready, but it's too late as he uses Thunder Howl, and that sends a huge lightning beam right at her. Julius screams out to her for some bizarre reason like, "Bro, back off." Anyway, Zio then starts to look excited as he sees a ton of Elfie clones standing right around. Julius says that it's Weiss clones and asks when she did it. Sarissa, on his side, tells Julius that she summoned them after blocking his view with her Cathedral of Ice. In truth, all she needed was a split second, as Elfie is the fastest caster in the tower. She then puts her glasses up and explains that she isn't just known for her speed, but also her ruthlessness toward her enemies, as we then see all of the clones starting to point their fingers at Zio. After that, some magic circles start to appear all around them, and Elfie tells Zio that Will is her. She then uses Almenta Oliscus and sends a ton of ice beams right at Zio, and trust me when I say a ton, as this is like nothing I have ever seen. Sion, on the side, explains that she just cast a high-grade ice barrage with no incantation, which would normally take an entire chant to cast. He took everything he had to cast that spell down on the 11th floor, and all she did was speak it into existence. He then started to grind his teeth together as he questioned just how she could be so powerful. But still, that's not even all, as she also uses her Revil Colentibium Stellus Natia attacks right at Zio, who is somewhere buried in the smoke. We then see Keredwin, who says that it's a bombardment of crystalline ice on top of the clones she's already summoned. Elfie's pulling out all the stops today. We then see Logwell, who tells him that her icicles are not just powerful, they are also swift and accurate in long-range battle. The Ice Maiden has the upper hand. Lastly, we of course see Finn with the brightest smile ever as he tells them not to forget that there's another beast in the cage with her. We then see Zio stepping out completely unharmed as he asks her if that's all. Elfie then right away looks at him while looking a bit shocked from the looks of it, but suddenly, somehow, he goes right behind Elfie in, like, no joke, an instant. He then completely grabs her head and uses something called Vulcan Flote. This sends a lightning beam strike all throughout all of her clones, so the one he grabbed must also have been a clone. We can then see him flying as he calls out to Elfie. He asks her what's the matter, asking her if this is really all that she's got, telling her that she has no clones left to take shots for her now, and then he goes to Elfie. He grabs her wand and then uses Zalgia Saga and completely sends a killer punch. Luckily, it's just ice that breaks, as it was a clone as well. We then see Elfie high up in the sky, just smiling down. We also see Keredwin, and she says that every exchange up until now has been a ploy to give her time to escape from him and prepare a final assault. We then see Eleanor, who explains that she cast hide on herself to circumvent any spells. Zio then starts to look right up at her. Meanwhile, Elfie just points at him and asks him how it's going down there, asking if he is having fun playing with her toys. After that, we see a huge magic circle under Elfie, as she then uses Clone Chain Full Connect. Zio gets a weird smile as he then tells her, "Well played," before we then see the entire area being completely filled with ice boulders and water, it seems like. We see a mage telling everyone to deploy barriers. After that, we see Colette, who seems to be pretty shocked by a chain circle, and Rose explains that she leveraged her clones to amplify the potency of a stronger spell, saying that she doubts even a Magia Vander could have survived that. However, we obviously then see Zio looking completely unharmed as he tells her, not really, and that fooling around with dolls just doesn't cut it for him. We then see Elfie staring right at him with dead-looking eyes. Meanwhile, Zio's himself. He spins around his spear before launching it right at Elfie and telling her that he wants to play with the real thing. Luckily, Elfie manages to dodge the spear, but then we can see that Zio has just somehow then appeared right on it, as he tells Elfie that he is behind her. After that, he starts to load up a punch as he tells Elfie that down she goes, and this actually seems to hit this time. As Elfie goes flying down to the ground, we do however see her taking her wand at the ground to most likely minimize the damage, but still, we can see her being hurt as she falls down. After that, she doesn't even get a second to breathe as Zio is right behind her, and then once again gets in a massive punch right at her, this time really hurting Elfie as we see her spitting out blood. The force is even so hard that she goes completely through her cathedral. Sarissa then screams out for her. Meanwhile, Zio starts to get out some lightning bolts before telling her that Will is his. We then see Colette, who says that she doesn't understand. All of his attacks until now has been close range. He's not fighting like a mage at all, asking if he is a knight enchanter like Lihana. However, Lihana tells her that she is wrong, and that from what she can see, all he's doing is releasing magic energy. We then see Guilford coming very creepily up behind Lihana, as he tells her that it is very astute, telling Lihana to watch closely, as this is the pinnacle what they in the Thunder faction live by. Great Mage Zio doesn't rely on complicated magic. He merely lets the energy from him, leaving everything else behind to him. It's nothing more than a form of movement, continuing and saying that it's a technique that inspires dread in all who witness it, calling it Wrath Bolt. After that, we see Logwell, who says that Zio's Wrath Bolt may be the only thing that outpaces Elfie's cast speed. We even see Croitz, who looks scared and says that he is endowed with a power that defies logic. It is absolutely monstrous. Zio's immeasurable might is the bane of his existence. Lastly, we have Scion, who also looks to be in shock, as he explains that Zio is showing them exactly why he's a Magia Vander, and how he earned the title of Wand of Thunder, which, to be fair, is super cool. Anyway, we then see the fight going on pretty intensely, but while they are fighting to the death, we hear Keredwin asking Finn who he thinks will emerge victorious. Finn looks confidently as he says that he believes in Zio. He goes deeper into it as he explains that Elfie created 12 spells on her own. There's no denying she's a whiz at spell work, but Zio is the king of praxis. He's second only to Aaron in dungeon progression, having made it 48 floors down himself. His mastery at applying magic is irrefutable. He'd say he's a man who is as much of a sword as he is a wand, and on top of that, if he is being honest, then Will would be better served under the direction of Zio than Elfie. After that, we move over to Cariot, who is sitting comfortably in his chair as he explains that if this were a long-range clash, then Elfie might have a chance, but as long as Zio keeps things close, he will dominate her. He then has a creepy smile as he explains that he thinks that they have a victor. However, after that, we move to Eleanor, who looks super down. We then see Philvis calling out to Lefia. He tells her that Eleanor seems to be disconsolate and asks her why she thinks that. Lefia tells him that it's simple, continuing as she says that she once lost to Elfie in a contest of ice magic. As much as she'd hate to see Elfie win, she doesn't want her to lose either. In a few words, she's stuck between a glacier and a hard place. After that, we then, funnily enough, see Eleanor, who screams out and asks them who said that the two of them could talk. We then head back into the battle, where we see that Zio got in a massive blow and sent Elfie right into the seating area, and she has a ton of blood going down her face. Sarissa calls out to her. Meanwhile, Julius starts to grab Will's shirt. He screams at him to wake up, asking Will if he is just going to lie here while Elfie loses to that madman. He starts to shake Will upside down and tells him that Will is the only one who can give her the push she needs to pull through. After that, we actually start to hear a couple of mumbles coming out from Will before he says, Elfie, with a weak tone. Anyway, we then move back to Elfie, and we can see the goggles she gave to Will are on top of an ice shard. After that, Zio starts to go to her and asks her if she is all out of tricks now. Zio then starts to look pretty manic, as he tells her that he then guesses that it's time for him to take his prize. He then points his finger right, and is about to load up a beam right at Elfie. However, to our surprise, it seems that there's a beam going to Zio instead. It goes right past him and brushes his face, even making him start to bleed a bit. We even see a lot of shocked faces, before Keredwin has a smug expression as she says that it looks to her like Elfie still is running, continuing, and saying that Elfie is just as tenacious as Will, and this panel is just crazy. Like, I am honestly really speechless. Elfie then speaks up. She tells Zio that he isn't taking anything. She screams at him that Will is not his to take. Zio screams back as he tells her that the Ice Witch lives, saying that she's even feistier than ever. He then admits that he has never seen her so riled up before, asking her what it is that has motivated this stunning transformation of hers, explaining that he needs to know. Elfie then holds on to Will's goggles as she screams that this is love, and I think that Elfie might be my all-time favorite character now. Anyway, Zio is super confused by this, but Elfie then closes her eyes as she squeezes the goggles. After that, she explains that Will has risked his life to protect her. He's put in the work to make it here to be with her. He's kept his promise, and now it's her turn. She looks extremely fired up as she screams that her love for him will see her victorious over anyone who stands in her way. Zio just laughs as he finally realizes that this is it and that Elfie desires him. Sadly, we then move to Colette, who we can see grips the bridge thing extremely hard because of this, and Rose just looks at her. Anyway, back to the fight, where Zio tells her that she is a fool, but still, he asks her to show him just what her love can do. We then see Finn, who explains that Zio's Wrath Bolt technique is nothing if not swift. The lightning flows through his body, boosting his movement and reaction speed, enabling him to unleash a mighty and rapid assault no mage could counter. However, the question is, what good are the boons of Wrathbolt if you can't even move? As we then see, Elfie has used her El Glace Frosse El10, Mildas Freuderite. Zio even then has a smile on his face as he asks what this is. Elfie tells him that this is a barrier spell, and a painfully infuriating one to cast at that. She explains that it requires she expend half of her magical energy within a certain range to manifest, meaning she has to cast plenty of spells just to set it up, asking if it isn't truly inconvenient. We then see Wignall thinking that the barrage of high-grade spells was just for this barrier. Lihanna thinks that she set up this trap, knowing Zio would fight her into a corner. We then cut to Eleanor, who explains that she pulled the same trick on her. It's her secret weapon. The closer you get to her, the more frozen you become. The Savage's speed has become his own worst enemy. We then cut back to Elfie, who explains that she initially created this spell because Will was too shy to sit still and let her hug him, which is so cute. But she continues and says that instead, she used it on him, and now he is stuck, but not for long, as it will be over soon. We then see Zio calling her a nasty witch, but Elfie just tells him that he is free to call her whatever he wants, but that Will is hers. She then starts to load up a punch of her own, as she looks super determined and explains that she will protect Will, just as if he were her bride. And it's official. Elfie is the best character in all of fiction. Anyway, she then manages to send Zio legit flying with her punch. Guilford can't even believe it, and Julius starts to shake Will upside down as he says that Elfie did it, telling him to open his eyes and that she really did it. We then see that he will open his eyes a bit as he just says Elfie's name. But not long after, we see Zio punching his way out of it, and we see Elfie looking extremely annoyed as she can hear laughter coming. We then see Zio, who is super damaged, but he says that the usurper approaches. After that, he starts to just look more insane as he says, "Light of innocence, thine eyes pure, look upon the promised summit of glory, and witness as thy greatness is upended by the viper." We then see Keredwin, who thinks that it's an incantation, and that Zio is through with playing games. We then see Eleanor being super pissed off, as she also thinks that it would take an unfathomable amount of magic to break through Elfie's barrier, and it seems that Zio's stupid enough to try. We then see her just calling him a reckless savage. She then calls for both Lefia and Fivlis, and then in the next panel, they are just gone, which was pretty cool. We then head to Colette, who questions herself about what this even is, and that she has never seen anything like it. Cian also looks really scared as he explains that Zio is casting a supreme grade spell. However, Elfie isn't backing down as she seems to be doing the same thing as she says, "White ice arise, wild vortex of chaos, torn shield of protection, remnants of war, as paradise dies, may silver white come to shroud it. As wintry winds blow, may witches mourn the heroes lost." With that, we then move back to Zio, who still isn't done yet. By the way, I'm not sure if you guys find it annoying with me reading these incantation lines, but hopefully it's fine. Anyway, Zio says, "Thrust thine unfair punishment unto the falsely accused. Cast the brand of sin into a sea of blood. May the prominent tumble, see praise turn to hate, and put love to sleep. May reason shatter, see lamentation, the mask of Minos." We then see Lefia and Fivlis again, and they together explain that attacking, moving and casting all at the same time, a textbook example of harmonic casting, an elfin technique, the savage is not above theft, and that he's made quite clear. We then go back to the goat Elfie, who's still doing her incantation as she says, "People perish, invaders depart." Then, nothingness. In her frozen castle, alone, the witch stands, tears onto graves, prayers to ashes, and oaths to the beyond. The throne of solitude now declares itself a protector. After that, we see a really shocked Julius as he says that it's a channeled incantation. Thinking that one after the other, the clones carry the spell on for her. What he tried to do up against the Grand Duke was nothing compared to the real thing. We then see Will behind him, who has finally woken up and asks if Elfie is fighting. Zio starts to smile right at Elfie as he says, "Deception cuts through to truth. Trample over all obstacles. Cut down the naysayers. Seize the power you know is thine own, and upon the viper, celebrate the splendor of despair." Elfie then looks at him with a cool facial expression, as she herself says, "With wings of frost and a keeper's beak, wielding an ivory truth, the ruler of the icy skies severs the chain of sorrow." We then see a whole aura starting to spawn around both of them, and Zio says with a derisive sneer, "The mighty demon sings," countered by Elfie, who says with a solemn visage, "The wise sage hums." After that, both of them look more than ready as they together scream an eternal hymn for the ephemeral flora that deceiveth the world. They then take out their hands and start to call back their wands, which was super sick. Zio then directs it at Elfie as he says, "Eradicate the kingdom of bellowing thunder and deliver demise unto the foolish." Meanwhile, Elfie also directs her wand at Zio as she says, "Come forth, world of silver, and deliver peace unto the sky." We then, however, see Will screaming out and telling Elfie to wait up. However, it's far too late, as Zio has already summoned his Vilgus Argo Thorzeus, and Elfie has summoned her Glacia Last Albus. And guys, come on now, what even is this? Like, this is the greatest masterpiece I have ever seen in my life. Anyway, with that, we see the two creatures starting to close the distance and go right at each other. We also see both Lefia and Fivlis saying, "Dio's Grail," which looks like it creates some sort of barrier around them. As just after that, the two creatures collide, and now I know I have said it already, but this is peak fiction. The force from their battle is so great that even the normal citizens can feel it, as we see Werkner, who says that explosions are coming from inside the tower, only they have the power to produce such sounds. Edward adds on that it's those blasted beasts, and they both know that it has to be the Magia Vander. We then head back to the fight, and we now see that almost the entire battle area is completely destroyed. We see a couple of mages even wondering if they are alive, and that they were sure that they were gone. We then, however, get to Will, who gets up in an instant as he screams out Elfie's name. After that, we see both Zio and Elfie right by the broken wall and lying down in a mess, with them both having a ton of blood on them. Zio even then has a smile as he says that it looks like they each got in a good hot one, telling her that he didn't think she had it in her. Elfie just tells him that she was just about to say the same to him. We then see Zio starting to get up again as he tells Elfie that the last spell took everything he had, but they still have a fight to finish, right? Elfie tells him that he is spot on, and after that, we see both of them once again rushing at each other. However, just when they are about to collide, we see Keredwin stopping Zio and Eleanor stopping Elfie. Both of them explain that the time's up. Elfie, however, is mad as she tells Eleanor to get out of the way. Eleanor tells her that, as much as she supports them destroying each other, she is afraid they have run out of time. Zio then tells Keredwin to get lost, but he just tells him that they stood by and let the two of them make a spectacle of themselves, yet neither of them emerged victorious, calling it embarrassing. But now that the king has arrived, perhaps he can weigh in on their predicament. With that, we see Aaron coming down, and he screams at them that it's enough. He explains that he will not tolerate any further friction between the Magia Vander. Zio right away screams at him to stay out of this and calls him an ancient white beard. Elfie joins in as she tells him that his peacemaking is useless, saying that she will not back down until the issue of Will's placement is settled. Zio also says that he doesn't see any way of solving this that doesn't involve him taking her down. After that, both of them get mad at each other as they stare intensely at each other. Aaron just looks at them before he tells them rock, paper, scissors, and with that, we can see everyone being completely dumbfounded. Anyway, Aaron tells them to attempt to resolve this with another method, and Will falls under his placement, asking if they understand. He then tells them to go on, and that he is watching right here. With that, the two of them don't hesitate as they go right into it and say that they will defeat the other fair and square. While the two of them are off doing rock, paper, scissors, we see Will ask Julius if he minds explaining to him what is going on. Julius just wonders where he should even start, but says that it is Will's fault at the very least. The time then goes, and we see that for 299 rounds they have made ties. But then for the 300th time, we can see that Zio manages to win with rock, and this makes Elfie scream out with all that she can. Zio tells her to eat it. Meanwhile, Elfie is crying uncontrollably on the floor. Zio then grabs onto Will as he says that to the victor go the spoils, like it or not, but Will is coming with him. Will is just super confused at this point, but we then see Elfie, who has gotten up and starts to hold on to Will, saying that she won't let him take Will, as Will is only hers. Will looks at Elfie, who is crying more and more. He thinks that he has almost forgotten that he isn't the only one who was alone. Elfie climbed her way up the tower all by herself. She's been waiting for 6 long years. He knows that he can't make her wait any longer, and that he wants to be with her, but after that, he speaks up. As he puts his arms on her shoulders, he tells her that it's all right, telling her that they will meet again, and that he will make sure of it. At this point, Elfie can almost not even say her name as she just starts to cry even more. But just then, Sarissa grabs a hold of Elfie and tells her that they have to go. Elfie looks crushed, but Will just smiles right at her. Sarissa tells Elfie to please not embarrass herself any further in front of the entire tower's Grand Mage. However, Elfie is just talking against her the whole way, but when she has finally been dragged out, we can see Will clearly be super sad as he starts to almost cry. After that, Zio speaks up and talks to Will. He asks him if he is coming quietly, saying that he thought that he would have to drag Will to his side, kicking and screaming. Will then closes his eyes while telling Zio that if he made any objection, Elfie would come right back out swinging and hurt herself in the process. After having said that, he turns around in an instant and asks Zio to please not fight with Elfie anymore. Will continues and says that if that's a commitment that he doesn't think that he can keep, then he will take him down here and now, and then join Elfie. Zio can't help himself but starts to laugh a ton as he tells Will that he has got nerve and that he sure likes that. He then places his hand on Will's head as he tells him that from this day forth, he belongs to the Thunder faction, and we can see that his whole robe then changes into a full black one. Zio then turns around and tells Will to grit his lions because they are in for a rude awakening. Will looks more fired up than I have ever seen him as he then tells Zio that he is on board with it. After that, we get to the tower, the first stratum interim room. There, we see Julius telling Will that it's ridiculous, saying that after all that crying about Grand Mage Elfie, he can't believe that he didn't even join the Ice faction. Will is just silent, but Julius then hands him his goggles. He then starts to go off at Will as he asks him if he understands how much trouble he caused him by going to the Thunder faction, explaining that when he tried to get Elfie to stop crying, she left in a tizzy screaming about how she wanted to quit everything. It took the entire faction to keep her from leaving. That's all the crap he has had to deal with. Will is just unsure what to say, but he apologizes, and he does thank Julius for getting his goggles back. Will then looks over at Lihanna and asks if something is wrong, and tells her that she looks exhausted. Lihanna somewhat whispers to him as she tells Will that he is part of the Thunder faction now, and that she will soon find out why. We then move to Colette, who asks if anyone knows what the deal is with this guidance session. Rose says that it seems like all of the new mages who've made it into the tower have been called to attend. Sion says that he is sure that it's just an assembly going over the rules of the tower. Wignall adds on that it would make sense. Life in the tower is bound to be different from the academy after all. Just then, we see Claire coming out. She takes out some sort of party things and sprays them towards the classroom. She then congratulates all of them on their faction placements and that not a single mage was left behind. After that, she does admit that she would expect nothing less from the generation of disquiet. Even the straggles from the first bloom managed to receive blessings. Let her be the first to offer them a hearty well done. She continues and says that within all of them lies endless potential. Now the guidance session is an assembly they hold every year to explain the ins and outs and do's and don'ts of the tower to new mages. But we then get a close-up on Claire as she tells them that this year is different. Instead of giving them guidance, she will be assigning all of them a highly confidential order. We see Will being super confused, but Claire continues as she says that each of them will be tasked with investigating their factions thoroughly. She tells them to pay close attention to the conversations, actions, and records of their faction and faction mates. Should they find anything suspicious, investigate and report it. Julius then pops up instantly as he asks her what kind of order is she talking about here. Claire tells him that the tower has been looking into the details behind the attack on Terminala, and they found evidence that could only belong to a mage of the tower. With that, she ends it with a boom, as she explains that there's a traitor among them, which is completely and utterly insane. Now, thank you so much for sitting with me for about 2 hours, and hopefully you somewhat enjoyed it. But while you are here, if you want to check out the previous arc or any of the other videos, then feel free to click on the screen now. Anyway, have a great day.